Yes, sir. Commissioner Stinson, Commissioner Montoya, Commissioner Bacon,
Here.
Commissioner Bernstein, Commissioner Mayers, Commissioner Scott, Chairman Metcalf.
Present.
We have a quorum, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Approval of the minutes of March 5th. I have a motion.
A motion to approve minutes from March 4th, 2025.
Motion's been made and seconded. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. New business, Coolidge zoning code, planning and zoning commissioner training. Commercial districts. Bill.
Alrighty then, as they say. Planning and Zoning Commission meeting for April 9th, 2025. A couple months ago, we went over the residential zones. As each of you at different times were appointed to the Planning and Zoning Commission, you received a copy of the zoning code. And I'm sure from time to time you take a look at it there or even online. So a couple months ago, when we had looked at the residential zoning districts, we went over each one of them with a couple examples to each of those districts. And so we thought it would be a good idea to also continue on with doing the business districts, essentially because sometimes when we have an application come, it's like in the R1 or the R2. So it references a couple of places, but never do we usually typically cover the basis of a large swath of the zoning code. So we think that's a really good example and why we're going to go through a little bit of stuff through the business tonight. So with that in mind, let's start off with our very first one, the C1, the neighborhood business zone. Now, calling it out, basically it says local centers for convenient retail, service outlets for goods and services, primarily for, once as you would say, the neighborhood, not necessarily for the entire community. Now, there's a couple interesting things about the C1 district. The very first one is that technically, if you look at our zoning map, we don't have a single C1 property or lot out there, and there's a reason for that. So I'll go through a couple of things here, but the first thing I'll call out is that it still serves its purpose because when you go down our principally permitted uses here, what you will find, as you can see by the examples here, kind of what used to be more in the day of like a cottage industry or sort of a mom and pop type of arrangement and stuff, where you'll see things even identified where it says like bakeries and food stores and offices and even restaurants of being less than 3,500 or 4,000 square feet. So still serves the purpose for those uses because when you jump over to our C2 district shortly, you see that it says here, all uses permitted in the neighborhood business zone, C1. So this list here is still applicable as it feeds into the C2 zone. So they still exist within the C2 zone, just underneath of this area. It's also good to keep it as it is because there's quite an array of different things that could have a different kind of footprint. Industry concepts change. This could still lend itself to it. Sometimes when we have the proposed developments of the PADs and stuff, they'll use our zoning code as like a shopping list. So they may say, I'm going to go with R1, R2, R3, and maybe they'd say, I'm going to do a C1 and a C3. So it's relevant still, and we refer to it quite a bit all the time. So what I picked here was just some examples of these smaller footprints here. Sometimes they were on the corner, detached. Sometimes they're in line, attached, things of that nature. Serving a good purpose, sometimes repurposed. You can see an older building here. Obviously, this flower shop's been repurposed. Sometimes they stand up, for a long time and keep serving the purpose of what they are. I look at this and I think either a laundromat or a barber shop, one of the two, I don't know. And then sometimes you can have, an update for the attached stuff in a line with some newer materials, kind of, but a rustic, older look to tie in this case, it looks like a clothing store. So as redevelopment opportunities come and some of the structures that we have or there's additions to them, this could be still a very relevant zoning district. So as we continue on to C2, so this is the general business zoning district and we'll call it out. noting here particularly what it says as low. You could almost refer to it as medium too as well. Retail service outlets for the consumer goods and services. More specifically, as we continue down here, community market scale located in areas which are served by an arterial street facility. So the C1 is meant to be more of like of an interior neighborhood. This is kind of getting a little further out amongst the individual neighborhoods, if you will. So in this case of one or two examples that we have here, picked a very familiar project here. This was in front of the Planning and Zoning Commission a couple months ago when we rezoned the corner of the regional park here, about 6 acres here, C2. You can see its presence here within the larger regional park. And then the zoom out here. Some stuff just kind of showing, the area here. And what we have here is basically a representation of like this is the open space area, the parking, and we'll get into some other things with regard to the definition of like intensity as we go a little forward here. Here's what the site looks like presently, looking in this direction. In other words, it's basically standing right here, out there, looking across this way, so you can see as it is and as it will hopefully look. And when this was proposed and the C2 was chosen, it was the hopes that the types of services and goods, whether it's a taco place or Little Caesars or a dentist's office or different things in between there of the different goods and services, that the open design here would create a very interactive process here where this area is utilized more, and this is also feeding into the particular shopping area here too, which you used to see a little bit more in the past than you do now. So this will be a really great addition to the community here and a good use of the C2 designation here. So our other, go ahead.
While you got that on there,
Yes.
what are all the blue areas? They look like tennis courts and,
That's exactly what they are. Tennis courts and pickleball courts
okay,
and basketball courts up here.
okay. Just checking.
So hopefully, somebody could have like a little, what do they call it? They say one-stop shop type of things, like in the Arizona Mills Mall. It's just like the perfect place where you just get thirsty for a Coke or a Gatorade. So maybe if they're playing over here and stuff, somebody would be smart enough to open like a 2,500 square foot shop or something with nothing but drinks and.
And what's the two round, are those pools?
Play pads, right?
Those would be the splash pad areas. Yeah.
Playground.
Yes, playground stuff, yes.
The green one's just an area for events.
So our other example, we were just talking about it just before the meeting here, C2. Most of the boulevard, we're doing C2, we'll be going into C3. Pretty much everything from the monument where Walmart and Safeway are, all the way down to where the Galloping Goose is either one thing to another, C2, C3. In this case, the reason why I chose this, outside of the fact that it's really nice looking graphics, I just got this off of the designer's website about 2 weeks ago. I think they just went up like maybe 3 or 4 weeks ago. This is probably what they used to show the owner what this would look like so that they move forward, and we've got it now. But when you're talking about commercial and intensity, it's not just the building, it's actually the activity. So in this particular case here, this use unto itself would require a major site plan, which comes before this body, but then the more intense use is the drive-through. So we do have a focused activity of the ingress, egress, and people parking here and going into the restaurant for whatever, 15 or 30 minutes. So there is a focused area there, and obviously ingress, egress over here, but you have a very focused area here which comes around this area for the linear stacking, as they call it, just a bunch of cars in the row. And for that alone, we also require a separate conditional use permit in conjunction with the C2 zoning for a major site plan. So that's just stepping up a little bit where we have 2 different types of permits. This is basically showing hopefully what the plants will look like in a couple of years. Once again, we're just referring to the site here and some nice aerial kind of angles here and stuff. But also arterial street facilities, let me note that, because we basically have the boulevard here, or excuse me, this way, and then we have Vicky, so it is well located with reference to this definition. And then since I got the graphic here, this is the site plan showing where all the trees are and stuff. And once again, you can see the basic level of intensity to the building alone, but then the higher level of intensity with regard to the special permit for the CUP for the drive-through. So that's why we do that kind of thing. So as we progress onto our C3 here, I'll immediately, outside of saying, here's our general service zone, say we immediately jump to the definition of high intensity. So here's the references again of retail service outlets, dealing with customers, consumers, goods and services. And this element calls out uses allowed in this district to provide goods and services on a community market scale. So this is going up even higher level of service to draw more traffic, trip generation as we call it, as they would come often on the site. So in this particular case, we got the dual branded hotel here, which obviously hasn't happened. It came before this body, but we're still hopeful for it. So you have many, many more parking places here, many more trips coming and going, people inside and outside of the building here. So it's not just the intensity of the activity, but then also you have an increase in the height here. So that's a definition of intensity too. So we're basically 4 stories here with a little bit of raised parapets here for architectural feature. So you get a combination of those things that actually facilitate what this basically is as an increase of the intensity, but then also properly located relatively to a larger scale area of the community market. So that is that example.
Can I
Yeah, go ahead.
stop just a second?
Yeah, absolutely.
The ingress and egress for this, have they got that situation done with the irrigation district?
Yeah, they're really close to it. They have the finalizing the permits through Cairo, and they're also we're also clearing out and widening the Ruins Drive and getting it ready to pay. Yeah, they have to get that done before the sooner than later. Yeah, we had a meeting with them last week, or was it earlier this week? I think it was earlier this week, and we got the update on it, so they're moving forward, because I didn't know if I needed to kind of push the needle for them or not, but it sounded like they had it,
Kind of bad with that.
they had it handled, yeah.
Laying down in the hole over there.
Yeah, they have to kind of increase the, pour a concrete cap or something on top of that thing to, and then they're able to pave it. But yeah, that permit went a lot quicker than we thought it would, so that was great.
With regard to that, I was telling James, and I don't know if I mentioned it to Gilbert, but there's one portion of Gilbert when I come down here for work that it's a kind of a townhouse cluster next to a Mormon church that they're developing there. And then all of a sudden, when it looked like they were ready to complete everything and start having people on their community trail to sell the units and stuff, they all of a sudden had to rip out 30 feet in the exact same location. And there's a lot of places with SRP irrigation canals still, whether they're piped or whatever, that go up and down in those areas because you have a lot of areas in the county still that are basically acreages. So I don't know what they did or didn't do, but then the next couple of days as I went back through there, they had regraded it and it's all concrete now instead of asphalt. So I'm imagining there was something there that whoever had authority with that was saying, we need better cover for that. So we're not the only ones that sometimes it happens to.
But I just wanted to check and make sure we had that,
Absolutely.
because I expect that that's gonna be before too long.
Hopefully. One way or another, if they want to get more traffic for their home sales back here, it's going to have to be work with what we got. So once again, C3, general service zone, talking about the higher intensity here. We talked about the height. We talked about the increased number of trip generation relative to the number of parking spaces, the travel lanes, the ingress, egress. So we're going to step into another C3 project focusing on a similar but different kind of intensity. So a little earlier, we talked about it being on a community market scale, and what a perfect terminology, because here's a supermarket, thus a similar term with it. And as you can see here for the Shopes IGA, we have lots of parking spaces, good-sized building, lots of trip generation, people coming and going, all kinds of intense activity. That unto itself is a lot. If you add a fuel island like this, people are going in shopping 15, 30, 45 minutes. If you have a fuel island, you basically got people literally making a pit stop, 2 to 5 minutes, maybe 6 or something of that nature. So all of a sudden the intensity goes up even higher. So we did do a major site plan for this. The fuel island here, as you can see, as it exists today, They gave us a couple of examples of what they thought it would look like, and it's not exactly the same, but it's pretty close. It looks really sharp and stuff. So in the zoomed in area here, you can see the intensity of the focused activity here, the circulation, how people get back in and around and stuff, how we worked with the adjacent habit of folks from the Goose parking over here, putting in a vertical curb, a little bit of rock landscaping to kind of give a visual barrier break so that it would not encumber people coming and going for whichever hours to make use of this new service. So that's another definition, kind of almost like the drive-through element, just a little bit different, but very similar, but more intense because you get 6 gas islands there.
And also mention the C, what's allowed in the C3 and the C2, and how it cascades down, what's allowed in C1 is allowed in C2.
Yes, that's what I had hinted at to start with.
Okay.
Yeah, that's why the C1's relevant, and everything in C2 can go in C3.
Yeah, so if you're in C3, then you can go back down and look at that. You can't do that with the industrials. So in some cities, you can go to C3 and C2 if you're in I1. In our zoning code, it doesn't allow that because it's too heavy use. So you have to be in the industrial areas to be able to do that. So C3 allows C2 and C1. C2 allows C1 uses, and C1 just, that's it.
So as we move on to our 4th of 5 districts here, this is our CO, Commercial Office Zone, and we'll kind of call that out a little bit. There's a little bit of a lengthy definition here, but we'll just highlight it. Talks about well-designed, attractive, professional, administrative, business offices, characterized by low volumes of direct customer contact, businesses, financial institutions, offices, lawyers, whatever, doctors, that kind of thing, dentists. So the interesting thing is that we only have one location in town that actually has this kind of zoning, but it's actually very effectively applied here. So there was a reference in here also talking about like a buffering between zoning districts or even roadways. So being Coolidge Avenue here, as the level of service of a street that it is right now, this fronts this area, which is this residential R4 area out here. Now, there's been a couple of multifamily proposals on this for the last couple of years. Last one still hasn't been undertaken. It was a really nice project, some density to it, but a really attractive looking project. So hopefully somebody will make use of that sometime. The reason I call attention to that is that even as an R4 multifamily district, that this CO district here offers a perfect transition or sort of buffer between the roadway here and the R4 itself. So I mean, we usually think R1, R2, lower density detached houses, but this type of transitional land use or buffering can actually be very effective even for a multifamily complex like this. So in this case, what you might have is different types of styles. You could have like a metal building that has a nice facade on the front of it here, is very attractive for these different types of uses. If you were getting into like the doctors and dentists and stuff, you might have a little bit of a variation of the architecture here, some different use of materials, things of that nature. And then if you were going, pretty nice, maybe a little more mixed use where it could even be some different types of retail and stuff, you might get, nicer facades, some parapets here, brickwork, wider open window facades and things of that nature. So this is a representation of what could be potentially here or in similar designated locations as time goes by. And it's really great to have that because as we grow in population, we will have the need for more of these different kinds of services, and buildings like this will arise more often, which will be nice. Create a little bit of variety. So as we go on to our last commercial district here, it is the Commerce Park Zone, CP, which is to provide for intensive retail, service, or in this case, manufacturing. Concentrated areas, but in this case, it also makes a reference of buffering from other uses, visibly buffered from arterial streets. Now, we don't technically have a CP, and this really is an I2, but it's a really good example of how a plat or a park might get laid out. This is obviously Industrial Drive. Our Public Works Department is here. The wastewater treatment facility is up here. And I'm sure you've driven past it or maybe driven out there and seen the stuff, but that kind of gives you an idea of what this is kind of intended to do. Now, if it was really nice and stuff, you might have a mix of different things. More often, you're going to have these other types of uses. And as you look at this here, you can see the building is further off of the roadway. You have like common areas of open space, drainage, even the parking lots, because this is basically this here. So you can see the main busier street right here, but buffered further by the landscaping, the parking, and more landscaping. And sometimes they even put berms out there, sort of raising it to sort of keep noise or headlights onto the site, and the same thing for the street going nearby. You don't always have to lay it out north to south. You know, you can have an effective plan here that makes a nice looking site plan like that. And then as you get a little bit larger, not to say that this would be iPads, because technically iPads is I2 as well, but you could have that kind of scale of buildings or the relationship of those buildings amongst themselves, which could be, as it looks like here, logistics, storage, transfer of things. But a lot of times actually you will see companies actually have their real office operation underneath of the same roof of like 40 or 50,000 square feet inside the distribution facility or whatever the building's being used for. So that's a great thing to have as well too. So that could be something as time goes by. And then, I just threw this in here because this is kind of like a more traditional kind of commerce park zone you might see. It's not necessarily just tilt-up construction or single story. You could have 2-3 stories with a nice entrance, accountants, lawyers, dentists, different types of business people and things like that. And that's a little more traditional. And so it represents the variety of the different things that could potentially be facilitated by the commerce park zone. So outside of that, that is a run through. Yeah, go ahead, Deb.
If this is land intensive, would the area that's Safeway, that with all the retail, wouldn't that, and it's got, or it meets a lot of these definitions, would that area be considered?
It's actually C2 and C3. The Walmart and the Safeway are actually C2 and C3. They can operate very similarly, but those are much more retail-oriented type uses rather than like a mixed use where you would have like office professionals and things.
Right, I was just going by the definition.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, they can be similar. The things to look for is kind of what they do call out. It can be similar. But really what this comes down to is that they can be similar, but it's kind of how it gets laid out. And this is how it looks different than what the Walmart would be or the Safeway, because usually you would just have a very large parking lot in front of it. These will usually have like travel lanes to facilitate not only regular vehicle access, but if there's truck access and different things like that. So it's kind of designed to facilitate both of those things instead of just single passenger vehicles the way a shopping center would be.
And you got to be careful about having manufacturing in the same place you have like a Walmart or Safeway, because then you have heavy truck traffic going in and out. So that's why we split them out, and usually you'll find I-1, I-2 specifically separated from the C3s and C2s. Even though this is kind of a mix, that's why we don't really have the city. It's someday we'll maybe recommend it, but we haven't had one that falls into this kind of category yet. In the future, maybe we will, but it would have to be lighter industrial and maybe a heavy retail that's more like a Granger or something that deals with, retail equipment, something like that. So.
Now I got another bone to pick.
Oh,
Let's get after the United States government and make it clean that area in front of Walmart. Make it look good instead of looking like a trash dump. It's a riparian area. I don't care what it is, but somebody needs to do something about it.
Yeah.
Fence is knocked down, the bushes is,
Yeah,
You're not wrong.
and it's not ours, it's got signs on it, but you can't go in there.
I thought the same thing this morning.
It's laying down all over the,
yeah,
there by Walgreens.
we notify the Nature Conservancy, that's who owns that, and they have to clean it up. So they often it gets out of hand and clean clean it all up, grub it out. What we're trying to do is there's been legislation to move that piece of land into the park system, so the park can maintain it. And they can identify, there's some actual buried artifacts in there that could be a really good source for like education for kids if they go out there but they haven't touched it because it's the Nature Conservancy. And what happened is when Walmart went in, they asked Walmart for that property. And so the Nature Conservancy did. So in order for Walmart to go in, they donated that property to the Nature Conservancy, and then Walmart pushed itself back, which what it ended up doing, because I was here when that happened, I was on the city council, they took our hotel site. It was gonna be behind Walmart and in that area, but when they pushed the Walmart back against the tracks, it took it away. So that kind of put a kibosh on our hotel site. So now it's in a different spot, which is better, which is better. And actually, so that's how we got to those pieces is negotiating to allow the Walmart to come in, because we had a lot of opposition from archaeologists and people that weren't from here, and so we had to work with Gila River between Gila River and the city, work together to get that in. Because we couldn't even, at that time, we couldn't even buy a pair of underwear in the city. The retail sales were gone. I mean, for that kind of thing. So that kind of brought jobs in and some other things that we were lacking. So they didn't push anybody out, which sometimes happens when you bring a Walmart in. Have small businesses that lose, but there was no competition because they were all gone.
Everything had already left.
Yeah, so it was, we didn't have that problem. So that's how it came in. So at that time.
Yeah. But it went back to the 1950s, 1960s, and tried to bring that Walmart in.
Oh, yeah. We had lots of
Babs,
we'll get back to that.
Mandela Harris, and
As we grow, we'll have businesses that are different, small businesses and other things. We have a lot of small businesses now.
yeah.
Yeah, when Brooks went out, that was the last one.
Yeah, that was the last department store. That's where I got my tuxedo for the prom. I wore a green tux, but it was dark green, so it almost looked like, because my girlfriend had a green dress. I had a match. So I'm like, I'm gonna wear a green tuxedo.
Could have been worse, it could have been powder blue.
It turned out okay.
Anyway, all things equal, that is our 5 business or commercial districts, and we are well situated to receive these different types of proposals as they might come in the coming years. So,
Is there anything that anybody else could do to help with that problem there in front of Walmart?
We've had Congress people actually have bills, it almost passed, and it had to have a supermajority. This is when Kirkpatrick was here. And then it was like that close. And then they've tried before, so what they want is an exchange for a property somewhere else to give that to the monument. So unless we buy, the monument buys it and they don't have the money to do that. So there's efforts underway for either Crane or Sisquamani or somebody to actually help us with that. So every year we bring it up, and then we're hoping that the opportunity comes up where they could exchange it for something else, land, and it keeps it up like they do the rest of them. So that we've been trying for years. Excuse me. It's it's really like the last time there was a piece of land up somewhere near the National Monument that the Nature Conservancy wanted, and then they were trying to get an exchange for that, and then it fell through. Something happened and it didn't go, and I don't know if it was environmental or there's opposition, and so it would go.
Even if they exchange that for something else, the Nature Conservancy did,
Yeah.
what are they gonna do with it?
Yeah, it'll become part of the monument, and then they'll change the fencing. They'll go through it, clean it up, pretty nice, and then the plan was to have some walking paths through it, so that the children, or not children, but just visitors could look and see, and they could have areas marked off that they could stop and see, well, this is a site where there was a historic, ball field or something. And then here's some pottery that was found that was a kitchen. And so they can mark it off. And maybe they won't have the real pottery up on top so people don't break it, but maybe examples of it. And so they've talked about, yes, Casa Grande National Monument. So it'll be maintained by the park people. And the fences will be kept up, the weeds will be controlled, all that.
We'll call our Congress.
Yep, that's great.
He owes me a couple of favors.
Okay, yeah, that'll,
I'll send an email out tomorrow to see if we can get that cleaned up, but
No, I just thought I'd ask because
yeah.
no, I thought the same thing today.
you guys got enough to do on your own without having to take over trying to clean up something else,
Yeah, we-
somebody else's problem.
We just tell them to clean it up, and they have to clean it up. So it's just, yeah, like.
We just have to follow up until,
Email.
Somebody's got to repair that fence, we have to pay the fence guy there on.
No, they have to repair it.
they'll repair it, yes.
They'll fix it. They've done it before. So we just have to let them know, because nobody's out here from the Nature Conservancy. They just aren't here. So we have to tell them, they don't know.
ASU owns some lots. Sometimes we have to send them an email and say, hey, clean your lot up on the corner of Picacho and Coolidge. That's not unusual for us to have to do that.
Okay, well, you guys do whatever you want to do. I just thought I'd bring it up because it does look like a dump.
I
Yeah,
agree.
Along the fence line. Plus
Well,
trash
it-
throws in there and nobody picks it up. It just looks bad.
Well, that's right in the interest of the city, so we have to keep it clean.
Yeah, that's a good point. They started the new gas station there, so the construction there, so that's going to be cleaned up. So it stands a reason to get that all polished up before the new station is in operation.
Yeah. They're working like mad. I saw the gas trucks come in the other day. They're getting hot and
Can you read that?
And that concludes Phil's presentation. Do you want to move into the reports from director?
Pardon?
Do you want to move to the reports from the director?
Yeah, you can go ahead and go to that. We don't have anybody to go to,
Well, that'll be after this.
go ahead and go.
Thank you. So we did have a groundbreaking for ABC 123 daycare, Vicki Neal's project. That was great. So that we'll see that moving. Permits are paid for. She's working with Arizona Water Company and the utilities to get that project going. And you remember that's on the north, the corner of Sproul and the Boulevard. We had the last fly-in last Saturday, and we served about 215 plates. It was a pretty good turnout. The weather was super. We accepted the invite to ADOT for the segment 2 of the north-south freeway, the north-south freeway corridor. So that kind of narrows in their environmental and their survey. We're keeping an eye on that to make sure. And then we had the community disposal the weekend before that, and the community cleanup. I don't know if you guys were a part of that. That was huge. They serviced hundreds.
That was another thing I was gonna bring up. It didn't get advertised.
Well, it went out on the.
Not a paper no more. That's another thing I wanna complain about. Paperback anymore.
I wish we had that.
Well, I wish we hadn't advertised it because we were covered up and there was hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of loads.
There were over 300 vehicles loaded, 300,
Oh,
yeah, and
man.
they were at the fastest port, they were doing one a minute. They're getting some out fast. I mean, when they had stuff they could just pull out.
And at the same time, we had the community cleanup where all the volunteer groups, their little sections of street. So that turned out really well.
Yeah, James was running around picking up bags and then helping with all that, keeping
You
everybody.
see me driving
lined up.
around
Yeah.
against traffic and luckily the police didn't pull me over. The women's club, we're about complete with the new windows. So that's nice. We filed, so Monday we do our public hearing for the CAC. So we're we're annexing CAC, so that's great news, have that college into the city. This coming Monday at the council is a public hearing, and then, we'll follow through with the rest of the process to annex that into the city. So that'll be great. Yeah,
If
sure.
everything goes according to plan, and yeah, it should. And that way we can provide some sewer service when they need it. They have an old pond system. And so eventually they'll have to connect to a sewer. For the school to actually try to build a sewer plant or a package plant would be so expensive. They just have to go like 3/4 of a mile down the street and they hook into our Signal Peak lift station. Being in a city, they can do that. And then also because they're in a city, we'll be able to provide fire protection. And, we'll be as part of it in the city. And then in exchange, we get to use our police, the firing range and, yeah, and also the burn building for our fire department. They can practice there. If we need property, the college is open to providing, a place for the fire station. But right now, we have a site already with all the utilities at Signal Peak and Val Vista, which is where the old one was. And then D.R. Horton stopped paying for that fire service and way back a long time ago, so we closed it because there wasn't a lot out there. And then, but now with the college and then hopefully down to the north, we're hoping Sandia starts. Have like 400 lots that are platted, and I'm hoping that hopefully they'll get a builder that wants to pave that and start those, and then that'll get us more housing out there. Sandia is pretty large. They're going to come back into you guys and it's about 12,000 plus lots with water, and yeah, so there right now there's a lot of plus 55 portions of it that the market won't support that, so they want to just put in regular houses and then cut down the number of golf courses because there was a lot of golf courses and there's water for that. But they may have a small like efficiency 9-hole executive course maybe. We could like to see, because it's so big, it's 3,000 plus acres. And so we'd like to see like a clubhouse with a nice restaurant. And that's how Ropes Ranch has that. And then I know when I talked to, I met with Tommy Wildemuth and Jamie Bechtel, they took me over to Anthem, to that clubhouse to have a sandwich and talk about, the property over here at Edgewood. And I was like, man, this is nice. We need something like this in Coolidge. So that's one of the things we want them to keep. So we'll be working on that. And it'll come to you, Phil, they'll probably apply in a couple of months, maybe? And yeah, so, and then the Signal Peak,
The
it's
Signal Peak
already,
campus?
yeah, you won't be able to see any,
Yes, ma'am.
yeah, the one here, yeah, it's already addressed Coolidge. People won't see any difference. I mean, they won't be able to tell. They have their own police department.
Except the only difference will be the Coolidge sign
Will be further out.
half a mile away
Yeah,
is gonna be moved up.
yes, yeah. Yeah, most people just think it's in Coolidge because of the,
Yes, yep,
Those-
right
no,
across the street.
The rock houses won't be in the city, but yeah, but it's, yeah. Mhm. Yeah, it's called the Signal Peak Campus. The Central Arizona has 5,
I drive past that all the time.
yeah, yeah, yeah. We
Yeah,
do-
our city limits are right against it, and it's our planning area also, so.
Yeah.
And so that other development.
It'll be, it actually starts huge. It's
Kind of east to north.
It starts by, yeah, it starts by Martin Valley, and it goes all the way, Martin Valley's going out to the college, that, where the dairy is, and then there's a development on the right side. That corner at the S-curves. Yeah, and then, so right there, it starts and goes all the way back to the corner almost where the dairy is by the old trading post, going to Chandler. So that's how large it is.
Oh, so that road, kind of by where the gas station is off.
Yeah, well, it's not that, it's south of that. So so if you're on Signal Peak and you drive till the desert ends and that part is, but then once you get past the desert portion of it and then cotton fields start, or on the left side, if you're going south, that's part of Sandia. Yeah, and that's the Wirtz family that brought that, and Sandia means watermelon in Spanish. The Good Life is what they named it after, so they call it Sandia, but if you look at the picture of the subdivision, there's a big cut of a
Sandia.
watermelon. It's pretty cool. So it'll be it was originally supposed to be like our anthem, And if they have a big master builder pick it up, that could be what it, it'll be like that. Yeah, yeah, and, it's just a matter of time, because there aren't, they have water. That's the key.
That's one that's
Yeah.
got water, I know.
Yeah,
That was guaranteed.
yeah, and that's a lot of houses that'll be.
Yep.
Well,
But it won't happen overnight. It'll be, a steady,
Years down the road, but.
yeah, infrastructure and, all things that need to be in. So part of it'll start and it'll just keep expanding as they go. And that's good. We don't want it to just boom. Just need to be nice, good progress that's not overwhelming.
We have to put in a stoplight in on Sixth.
We may, yes. Yeah, we need one on Martin and the Boulevard.
God, yeah.
Yeah, we need one there.
You get off the freeway
Yeah.
and you want to turn left
Oh, over there? Yeah, oh yeah, I've been there. Yeah, it's hard to turn left when the traffic's,
forever and ever.
yeah. You almost think of turning right and flipping around and coming back.
A lot of people do that.
Yeah.
They turn right and then they go into that side and I
Yes.
see them flip around and I'm like, oh, you cheater.
If you didn't see me do it, and I was coming back.
And also last month, we issued 35 single-family permits, so that was
Now, what permit,
single-family residences,
how many?
35.
And we could issue more. It's just we're working with Arizona Water because of some of the things we're doing on the treatment plant. So they're releasing so many permits at a time. So they're kind of, as we go through and work on that plant, they still got to do the fluoride treatment portion of it. They have the you think fluoride is good. Too much of it's not. So it's got right now there's naturally occurring things in the soil that are a little bit above the parts per billion.
That's why when they're treating the water, I think it's like the first of the month. 2 minutes I run my faucet, all I can smell.
Oh yeah, could be
Now, they
that
superchlorinate, that to keep the
bugs,
lines from getting marked.
bacteria.
James, with those permits, where's the density on those? Is it part of the new development that's going across behind,
6 of them. There.
right over there?
Yeah, it's Gateway. There's a lot of infill lots going on. There's still lots going on in Heartland. It's just spread out throughout the city.
In Cross Creek.
Yep, yeah, Cross Creek, all the established subdivisions.
What's being built back behind,
That's the Gateway off of Ruins Drive. And if you see, we're kind of clearing that retention area out. That's for the widening of Ruins Drive, paved also.
yeah, there's 120 lots back there.
And that's all I have, Commissioners.
That's fine. James, bring some more.
Well, I still have the RFP out for that commercial lot for C2, so we're waiting for that. We're hoping we get some good bids. So that commercial parcel, we're selling that so we could help fund that park. I do start next week for the park, the environmental survey for it. So we're going to try to get all the environmentals approved, and so we could go for a National Park Service grant and they'll match some funds. So they're going to give us about $1 million. We have $1 million in impact fees, so you're gonna see some movement there here within the next 8 to 9 months. We want to show you guys that we're working on this. It's a 50-50 match. Yep. I do have another grant it's ready to pull the trigger out the airport, and instead of a 91 match, they called me today and said it's going to be a 94 or 95% match. So it really reduces the city's burden. So I was pretty happy to see that. But I know, and I got another 2 hours of applications that I already filled out that I got to refill out. So, but other than that, any other questions? Libertos, we're still waiting on the civil plans, their foundation plans. I think, did they pull the civil plan?
They've submitted it.
They submitted for the civil plan, so that's another one we're just following up. There's a,
Well, they got a foundation plan
They got foundation plans, they got to water, get their water approved through Arizona Water Company, and there's
Buildings,
the building's approved, but it's just we don't have the foundation plans.
buildings actually approved.
They're taking their time because be patient.
Exactly.
Like the stock market, be patient.
You'll see some more things coming up probably before the summer.
I'd like to know what the little 16 are that's coming at us that Bill keeps talking about, but.
Oh, we can't talk about that.
Oh, some of them are, like when Hawk Hollow came through here with their amendment, they have to go through a major site plan process. And they did actually submit their first round to us quite a while ago. They're just kind of waiting until they can coordinate some of the offsite water and sewers. So some of it will be the next stage of things that you've already seen. Some of it is stuff that we can't say, but hopefully we can soon.
So P&G.
There's some things happening behind the scene that have to take place with global water and agreements and all kinds of things like that they have to work through. Because it's the infrastructure. They have to get all that worked out, and then they're working on the civils and their building plans. And I believe they have them done. They just won't pull the trigger until they're ready to get all the other things in place. And then once they start, they're gonna say, okay, we want this like, that's the way it usually works. We'll do everything we can to move forward as fast as we can.
They keep talking about how they need more data centers.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't heard nothing, all I hear is crickets from down south here. We got lots of room for data centers.
Yeah.
And in the beautiful coal deal the other day, northern Arizona, that coal-fired power plant, it ain't shutting down.
Yeah, that's what I understand.
It's running.
Yeah, right.
They're gonna be mining coal.
Yep. Yeah, that's what we've heard. So,
I heard him say it.
yeah. Now you'll see some things coming up. It's just they just move at their own, pace because of all the infrastructure needs that they have. So hopefully we'll see some things that you'll say, that's what I was asking about a while back. So.
Anything else?
We can move into call to the public, sir, if you'd like. Sorry about that. We can move into the call to the public.
Since there's no public present, I'm not gonna call to the public.
Good job.
Can I have a motion?
I'll make a motion that we adjourn this meeting.
I'll second.
Motion's been made and seconded. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Meeting closed.